Hello everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Monthly Market Outlook for the month of July. Today is July 1st, 2021. We have ourselves brand new pivots for the month, brand new quarterly pivots for the quarter, and we have a ton of great stocks to take a look at here today. I mean, this list must be 12, 15, maybe even more in terms of stocks. A lot of great different types of opportunities, and also looking at futures as well. If you have any recommendations on any particular stock you'd like me to look at, or futures contract, or anything at all, please type it in the chat, either in the trading room or through the Zoom chat, and I'll be happy to get to it at the appropriate time. First, my name is Frank Ochoa, also known as Pivot Boss. I wrote a book called Secrets of a Pivot Boss a little over a decade ago, and it continues to see great feedback from traders all over the world. Very, very happy to see that it continues to help traders and at least speed up the learning curve quite a bit more than many other books out there. A lot of what we'll be doing in this particular webinar with regards to tools and analysis and concepts are derived from that book, including pivot trend analysis with the pivot range and the PivotBoss Pivots. I will be using different tools that are not explained in the book. I chose to focus on various types of pivots, including floor pivots and Camarilla pivots. We also discussed various signals, including the extreme reversal signals, which you see here, wick reversal signal, which you see here, outside reversal signal, which you see there, and you can see all of the various signals here from chapter 2 of the book. But what I do use are PivotBoss proprietary indicators and tools, including the PivotBoss Pivots, PivotBoss Bands, the advanced ADR indicator, which is down here, PivotBoss Oscillator, and more. And what we'll be looking at today, primarily speaking, is we're going to be looking at the new quarterly pivots that have just come online, the new monthly pivots. We're going to talk some composite PivotBoss bands in NinjaTrader. So here's NinjaTrader 8 right here, and these are the bands right there. So we'll discuss that as well, and we have a great list of stocks to get to as well. So a fantastic amount of things to do in a very short amount of time, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate the feedback there, Suhas. Very, very much appreciated, all the way from India. Thank you for joining today. Thank you for the thoughts on the book. I put a lot into that book. It took me a good 15 months to really finish it the way I wanted to. I rewrote it basically after about 6 to 9 months, and completely rewrote the book to its finished product, because I really wanted something that would stand the test of time in terms of its concepts, that traders could use not only when they first got the book, but 10, 15, 20 years later, or even more. And so far it has been able to do just that. And working on the framework for book 2, and would love to release another book here within the next year or two. That'd be fantastic. All right, let's take a look here at the ES. Number one, I want to say we'll start with futures here. We've had a fantastic uptrending market here in the ES. You can see the basic framework here of the trend has looked something like this. You've seen the upper edge, something like that. You see market structure like these CLVNs right here, and this lower CLVN coming into play. Now you have 4250 as a new developing CLVN, kind of like this one, and you have the D-shaped profile that looks like this. We've seen this thing come from a major week of weakness to see a failed new low and bounce and return all the way back to the FOMC key level and through it. This market remains very, very bullish. So very difficult to fade this market unless you start to see a multiple day push downward. you may see 3-4 days of pullback, but after that, expect it to continue to rip higher. Right now, everything continues to remain on track. This is just the year to date trend, but if you go back even farther, I mean, the trend has been ongoing for a while. Market structure continues to remain intact. If we were to see some significant event, 4,000 may be a phenomenal zone to look to defend for a continuation. So right now, still very, very bullish overall. That goes for the YM. That goes for the ES, NQ, and any of these others. Right now, it's just very, very strong. Now, here's one thing. We got new quarterly pivots here. You know, normal pivots might go from one day to the next using the previous day's high-low close for the next day's pivots. You may do 1 week to the next, 1 month to the next. The quarterly pivots uses 3 months high-low close information in order to generate the pivots for the next quarter. So you're using 3-month pivots basically, and they're very, very powerful. They give you a higher time frame look and feel for the new quarter to come. Right now, what you see looking at these are the quarterly pivots, these are the quarterly, these are the quarterly, and this month looks like this. So, or this quarter. What you see is a very clear uptrending path quarter over quarter. You also see higher value relationship from one quarter's pivots to the next. And right now we're at the edge of the pivot. So we could see some sort of pullback here that could be somewhere inside the pivot range for the month or for the quarter. And being on that line could provide another opportunity to push this thing farther to the upside. We do have this 4250, which is providing a pretty decent area of support. If we were to come back to this area, that might provide a first jump. But right now, any pullback into this zone provides an opportunity for this thing to continue to push higher. In this case, you know, typically speaking, in a good trend, you're looking for the R25 or the R50 to be reached. For example, here's the R25 here late in the month. Here's R25, and by the end here, or very close to it, R50. R25, this is R50 right there. Actually, no, it's not. That's 75. So you can see how it just continues to push up. So if we continue higher at this pace, based off the quarterly pivots, we have a really good shot here to see a continuation toward these upside targets, which start to put you out there toward 4450, 4470, somewhere in that zone. So this could be a really good continuation higher here until proven otherwise. So while we may see a little bit of weakness here, that weakness likely to be defended again until proven otherwise. Very powerful trend here for the ES. Now let's change this up just a little bit. What I wanted to show you right now is seasonality. So I'm going to drop this down to seasonality here, show prices percentage. And this is something we talked about over the last few days in our trading room. There's that right there, and if you bring it up, we're right here. And so we mentioned here that we're in one of the most bullish stretches of the year. It's that last week before 4th of July. 4th of July, here's the 5th of July right there. And then the week after that. So there's a 2-week period here. We're right in the midst of that move, just beginning it here. So seasonally speaking, we have a very, very positive July that is likely ahead. Statistically speaking, July tends to be the highest odds month to finish in positive territory. And so right now, statistically and seasonally speaking, we're in the midst of a very bullish period of time. As a matter of fact, if you were to hold over the 4th of July weekend or over the 4th of July holiday in the United States, there tends to be a nice float up effect where price floats into the holiday and through the holiday. And that's what we're kind of heading into right at this moment. The 4th of July holiday in the United States falls this coming Sunday. Today and tomorrow are the last two full, well, today was the last, one of the last two. Tomorrow is the last full trading day before the 4th of July holiday. and then next Monday the markets will be closed in the US. And then after that you may see prices gap up on the Tuesday following with a continuation that could resume. So one thing to keep in mind, again, in a very bullish part of the year, seasonally speaking, we tend to see some sort of pullback in August, and depending on how severe that pullback is, it could be a great low point ahead of a year-end rally. October can tend to give a good pullback as well before a year-end rally. So right now we're in the midst of that bullish seasonality here for the ES. All right, let's take a look right now at the NQ. This is the NQ with seasonality. Oh, before we move on to the NQ, let me pull this over. I meant to show you here. This is the ES in NinjaTrader. These bands right here are the composite PivotBoss Bands, weekly VWAP, or sorry, composite VWAP, and then you have R1, R2, R3. These right now are measuring 1,000 bars back, so 1,000 bars back. And so right now you see that price is currently trending up outside the top end of that range. That is R3 right there, and R3 is providing a bounce and go, bounce and go. It's literally riding the rails on a composite basis. That is the most bullish trending structure that you can have with regards to analysis and these bands. Because again, these bands, here's a look at them. What these bands are measuring, just in case you need a quick refresher, this is volume weighted average price, VWAP, but is measuring it for 1,000 bars back, so it's composite VWAP. This right here is 1 standard deviation above. There's 2, and this is 3 standard deviations above value. There's 1, 2, 3 down here. Standard deviations below value. When you look at this last year and you look at the COVID sell-off, price dropped below 3 standard deviations. And when it was able to come back above those 3 standards, that's when it bounced back to value. It rallied across to R3. And then it pushed to new highs and continued to hold here while it goes into a very bullish trend above R3. This R3, again, 3 standard deviations above value against 1,000 bar look back on these composite bands. That means that this market has been in a very aggressive price discovery phase, trending phase to the upside above R3. That's tremendous. You just don't see that very often unless it's in the most bullish scenarios. So that is tremendous. And until proven otherwise, we continue to see this behavior play out. Again, we may see a pullback, but any pullback is limited, and what follows is further strength. So I wanted to show the ES based on the composite bands there. Now let's take a look here at the NQ. The NQ again pushing right in line with its yearly averages, at least on a 5-year look back basis. Bit deeper of a pullback here in May and continuing higher again, starting right here in the last week of the of June. You tend to see a push higher that explodes into the 4th of July. That's the 5th of July, and then about a week afterwards peaking out. So we're right at the beginning end, the first third of that leg higher. We could see further strength here early next week. So if we see any kind of early weakness next week or tomorrow, or any kind of weakness over the next couple of days, it could be a phenomenal buy the dip for a continuation up as this thing continues to show strength during this seasonality. Now, if you think 5 years may not be enough, you can always come over here and update that to, say, a 10-year or a 20-year look back. 10 years out, if you do a 10-year seasonality here, it's still there. It's still at the last week of June, and it still goes through the first couple of weeks of July. Just a very bullish period of time here for this market. Now, if we take a look at just a basic chart here, let's bring this back. Obviously, we're at tremendous highs here. We have now hit the 50% target of the key range. Here's your key range right there. Here's your high back to that zone and all that continuation. The 100% target that we've had on the book for this one for a while now remains 15,073, 15K. So that's why before, right in this zone, it was coiling up, and we mentioned, you know what, we may be due for a breakout. 13K might ultimately give you 14K and up to 15K down the road. It did give 14 right away, double top, came back hard, hit 13 again, back to 14, and now making its way up to 15. This is very, very bullish. Again, we are up against what could be a pullback counter trend move into the pivot range, followed by completion of this target up ahead. You can see that from the current low of the month, which is today's low, which may not be the low of the month, obviously, that would be your full 100% target, 15,239, based off of average 10-month range. So that means we could drop 239 points from where we currently are, and then that would still give us a 15K 100% target easily, based on average range. So we have a really good shot to see some sort of pullback early this month, which could be a great continuation. How low that goes, we will see, or even if it should pull back. I mean, this market's been very resilient, but we have a path toward 15K coming up for the NQ. All right, I wanted to talk here a little bit about the YM. The YM here, very, very strong, super bullish. This one gave us one of our most bullish patterns here recently with this low right there. That is an extreme reversal low. Extreme reversal, straight from chapter 2 of the book, Secrets of a Pivot Boss. Extreme sell-off bar in the previous session when you have a range that is well over 125%, but usually 150 or 200% of average range. If I click my advanced ADR indicator here and drop this to 1 day, we can measure the 1 day range. And when you come back this way, we're looking at this bar right there. That was right there. Huge move. 125% is there. It went well through it. It was a 600 point plus day. And then the day that followed was even bigger. That was nearly a 900 point day. And it was a failed new low that started it off 33K for a bounce up. That is about as good as it gets when you're looking at the market from the lens of how we approach it at Pivot Boss. You have a great uptrending market. You have a very strong pivot low right here. That strong pivot low is reflected by that high and that low. That gives us a key range. So if you come to that key range low and you reject it, odds of bouncing back to the mid are high with a shot to continue across the range. So in the trading room on this Friday, one of our traders in the trading room said, hey, if we wanted to play for a bullish move next week, should I do it now before the close, or do I wait till Monday when the market opens? And I said, wait till Sunday night. Sunday when the market reopens, you'll likely see a failed low, and then you have a shot to see a fade back to the mid. If it can close through that mid, you have yourself a full-on rejection, and we have a move to 34. If we can get to 34, high odds that we get to 35. That's a 2,000 point idea, and so far it's been playing out perfectly. So the point of the story here is we have a great D-shaped profile right here. We've got great edge play here, and now what we're looking is for a continuation up into 35 ahead. So any pullback again, any pullback to begin the month or to begin the quarter could provide a nice continuation toward 35K up ahead. Very, very solid right now the way this is played out. The previous rejection there, right on the money here, holding at highs, still showing a bullish path toward 35K and likely beyond. At that point, wouldn't surprise me if we made a move back across the range and then we can do it again. But so far, this market been so bullish, it really hasn't been taking out previous lows very often. Now, one more thing here, based off of that's funny, Mike B. Here, let's pull, let's see, no, this one right here. So I'm gonna make the pivots here. Nope, that's the wrong ones. These. I'm gonna go over here and say no. Okay. So the last thing I want to say about YM is give a target. Here's a target. You have that key range high, which is reflected by that PivotBoss pivot. That key range low, reflected by that PivotBoss pivot. The midpoint is right there. You're trading. That's after a bullish move. The best spot to buy is always below that key range low right there. We got it. Great move back to the middle. Expecting a move back to the top and that line right there. Oh, sorry, this line right here. And then, should we break out, looking for a continuation toward this line right there. So from that high to that low, that range, 100% target of that key range is that line right there. That's the target that we want to shoot for down the road for the YM whenever we see a continuation. That is 36.8. You know, we can be a little bit more precise, 36.793, but call it 36.8. That's our target. So whenever you're planning these, right, as we did, we had that impulse move. We said, okay, 33 could be a great spot, and we knew it ahead of time. 33 to 34, 33 to 35, and ultimately 36.8 down the road could be ahead. So this one's still looking really solid with a continuation that could make its way toward that 36,700, 36,800 zone. So this one's really good. I wanted to show, let's see, the YM here. This is NinjaTrader's PivotBoss Pivots. R3 is right there, and you can see that this one has also been bid up at or just below R3 time and time again. Recently we dipped low, and that's the one we were just talking about right now. That white pivot is the key range low, bouncing back up, but it's been pushing beyond R3 quite a bit and could be headed much higher ahead. So again, good looking stuff here out of this one with the potential to move much higher. Now that's just this key range low. If you wanted to do a key range from that move, you could. That's certainly in play. That would be the current month's pivots, that pivot high and low. In that case, you'd be shooting for 36,752 based on that one. So it's very close. So anyways, good stuff right there out of the YM. Okay, there's a ton to get to here as we continue forward, so I am going to pick up the pace a little bit right now. Let's take a look right here at Bitcoin. Bitcoin has seen a top. As of right now, above 65K, it is now trading at about 50% of that value in very short order. The one thing I've mentioned about this in our room is that we have great market structure. 30K here. You got about 42, 42.50 there. Obviously, you have the market structure above, that's 45 to about 57s. And then you have market structure that takes you down to 20, 15, you go down to 1250, something like that, right? Somewhere in that zone. You can see right here, this was frenzy in December. Didn't even trade some prices. These are the futures, obviously. And then you have that channel right there that at some point probably needs to be retraded. So great market structure movement. Right here, this was a big test, and it held 30K. The idea was it could bounce as high as up here, but if we see this level up here, it's probably a sell back down. If we fail to hold 30K, you probably drop at least to 20, maybe as deep as 15. If you drop to 20, you might do something like this, and then you may drop again and do something like this until it's finally able to make its crazy move to 100K or something down the road. So right now the market structure is very friendly. At the moment we have a lower value relationship month over month, confirming close. It's been offered since the FOMC key level came out, 39,140. Can it break down even lower? If it can, here's the trade idea. There's two ideas depending on what happens. 17.5 is a really good level, and 15K is a really good level. 17.5, right now what we're seeing is a D-shaped profile develop here, and the middle of that D-shape where the HVN is right here at 35. So if we were to drop away from value and drop downward, 17.5 would double back to the HVN above. That's a great opportunity there from a short-term perspective. Another way to look at it is if we are going to break though here at 30,000, then can we get down to 15K? Can you be patient enough for a 15K? Because 15K, you bounce back to the broken market structure and you've doubled to 30. This one is capable of those types of moves, but it is also capable of digesting in a market structure range for a while. This has been a very atypical year, obviously, and so far we've been marking down ever since that failure up here. We've marked down here, we've marked down here, and now we may do it again. How low do we go on the next go round? At some point I think it's worth looking at on these pullbacks, because market structure targets up above would be high probability targets. So just some thoughts on Bitcoin here. With regards to this one, let's see. The last thing to mention on this one is that the all-time high coincides with the IPO for Coinbase. That's the all-time high, and that was the same day that Coin came online. And so far we've seen Coin mostly drop ever since. Tremendous. One last thing I'll do here is throw up Bitcoin in NinjaTrader 8 along with the PivotBoss Bands. Again, looking at 1,000 bar look back. Remember I mentioned if prices is above R3, it is the most bullish price discovery phase that you can get until it fails. And when it fails, it can tend to go back, back, and back. Right now, composite value, composite VWAP on the PivotBoss Bands, 17,996 over the last 1,000 bars. So it's looking all the way back, you know, starting back here somewhere, 2018. So it's looking 1,000 bars back and is drawing this for us. I could do 500 bars back. I can do 300. I can do whatever. I put 1,000 just to make it nice and meaty. you got to think that if it were to hit value here, it might provide that opportunity for a bounce. So right now it's working its way down. The next one I'll look at right now, ETH. ETH is Ether Futures, Ethereum here. Major weakness, this one coming down from 4,400 all the way back to about 16 and change. That's a tremendous move right there. One thing I'm watching here for this one, and it's mostly this right here. That's a great range right there. You have a range somewhere like that up above it, whatever that might look like, and then something here and something there. So back down here it was starting to fail until that day. It's now bouncing. Can it continue to hold 2K? If it can continue to hold 2K, we might have a little bit of price action that does this. But as I've mentioned in our trading room here, this has a downward trend still, a parabolic rise, and it hasn't really completed the full-on parabolic decline. We may still see at some point a drop into the lows, 1400 or below. You can see right here, that's your kind of D-shaped profile, value high, value low, VPOC. It's taken VPOC offered. That's at 2600. So if that's value at 2600 and it just took it offered here, I know there's a lot of drawing, so let's do that again. Here, here, value, it took it offered, boom, and now we're lower. We still haven't reached below value yet. Remember, that's 2600. What if we were to drop below value and hit 1300 right here? 1300 back to value gives you a double at 2600. That could be a trade worth waiting for. So just something to consider with Ethereum here. It's trying to hold these levels, but if for some reason we see some weakness up ahead, 1300 is a level to consider based on value up above. Yeah, so Joe, were you mentioning that question right there on the YM? I think you were asking when it came down into that 33K, what's your confirmation? Were you waiting on the 1 hour bullish bar? 1 hour hourly bars, rejections in the 1 hour chart are significant. I do like hourly rejections. I think we use them every day. We look for signals on the hourly. I think those are powerful. Same thing with a 15-minute can be really good, but an hourly rejection is really solid. But what we're looking for really is the previous session's low or the previous week's low, and then we're looking for a rejection of that low. So sometimes price what that means is price will drop below that low, do whatever it's going to do, but as soon as it's able to claim acceptance back above that level, it's probably going to start working its way up now. It has rejected. It's what we call in the trading room a failed new low. FNL, failed new low. And it tends to look like this, where it drops down, it rejects, and now full on up mode, right? Right here. Drops down, rejects, full on up mode. Right here. Every single one of these moves starts with a rejection of the previous session's low. And so that's why we mentioned it Friday. Watch that low. So the fact that it got below 33K and then started to bounce, as soon as it was able to stay above the previous session's low, it's probably already an opportunity here to fade it back to the midpoint as a day trade. The midpoint being this golden dot, followed by a continuation. Yep. Now in terms of a stop, now that's different for everybody. Depending on how many contracts you want to trade, what your scaling approach is going to be, what your duration of hold is going to be. For this one, for example, when you have a big down day like this, we call it a trend day or a stop run day. we tend to say, okay, look at the previous low now, because we might see a rejection. And that's called a fade after trend day, where you fade back to the mid. You see it over here as well, right? Drops down below the low, way below the low, but as soon as it climbs back above, it goes back toward that mid. So that's a day trade. And we look at that quite often, and that's right there is where we say, okay, if you're only playing that back up, then you may do your reward risk there, you know, say, okay, now my stop's below the low, or whatever the case is. But if you were looking at one of the trade idea I also mentioned was the swing idea, which is basically 33 with a target at 34 and then a last target at 35. You know, if you're doing it that way, then a stop below the low, because we're assuming that that is a strong low. So depending on where you're at. Another way to look at it is if you're day trading and you want to use like what is your stop and what is your first target. For example, we use equidistant T1, T2, or sorry, T1 and target, so that you can get to a break even on the trade once you scale. One thing we look at is 10-day ADR. And 10-day ADR right now is 427 points, which means it's been averaging 427 points per day over the last 10 sessions. If you take 10% of that, just 10%, you now see it's about 43 points. That would be a good range as a stop and a target, a T1 target, from a day trading perspective. So 10% of the day's average daily range. So just some things to consider there. But very good move here across the range. Really, really solid, and almost to 35 with a shot again to see a key range target much, much higher. Yeah, the fade new low opportunity, that's right. I did mention that. Might be, and some of them have been doing it and some haven't. Today, the NQ did have that. Yesterday was the ES. You know, crude oil did it a couple days ago, so everyone's been a little different lately. Okay, I wanted to jump into some stocks right now. Since I mentioned coin a bit ago, I wanted to jump into coin right now and talk about this one. Coin is Coinbase. Allows you to engage the crypto market as a participant, and ever since it came online as an IPO on its IPO day, that day they were looking at like a 220 or 225 type of opening print, but by the time it actually printed, it was over 380. It shot up to over 400. By the end of the day, it closed back below 340, and ever since it has been down, 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 down. So this tends to happen sometimes with some of these IPOs. Some other IPOs might open and just rally. Some might sit there and build and go. Some crater afterwards. We've seen it happen. This one happened to coincide with the top in the crypto market, and it was clearly evident there, and now we've been selling off ever since. I think we are getting to a point here where we may actually see a very, very good buying opportunity back toward 310. So let me outline this here real quickly. You have this low right here, very much in play. That's around 210. You have these lows kind of about 240 or so, or you know, maybe you come up to these highs somewhere in that zone. You have this zone right there, that's the LVN, that's 310. And then you have whatever's above that up to that volume ledge right there. So that volume ledge right there. One thing I want to point out is the pivot range. You see that pivot range right there? It's overlapping lower for this month. But look where price closed. It closed above it. So it's an overlapping lower value relationship with a change of bias, which means that bulls are trying to change the bias of this trend here by closing it bullishly here, and that means that any pullback into the pivot range to begin the month ideally will be defended by bulls for a shot at new highs and maybe a move across the next market structure ahead. So the next market structure, again, remember, you have that high right there that comes in here. Right now we're at this low. Can it get back above these lows here? This midpoint right there, that's the midpoint of the previous month's range. That could be an opportunity to slingshot this thing up. So that's what I'll be looking for here. For this one, you have about 235.50. 235.50 is the level. 235.50 here. This isn't exact right now. We might see this thing drop hard, but then finish with a tail, and that might be the day that says, okay, we're about to make our move. I hesitate being too bullish on this one because it has been nothing but weakness. Every time it's popped up, it's been an opportunity to sell. Pops up, sells, pops up, sells. Popped up, and right now it's pulling back. But based on the market structure, there are things to be optimistic about, and based off the pivot range relationship right now, lower value but with a change of bias, that would tend to tip the scales to the upside. So right now we may see a little bit of weakness to come. Can we find a rejection? Can we find a higher low? If so, that might open the door to 310 ahead, and from there you likely build energy and make the move to 350, etc. So something to consider here with coin. I wanted to talk Apple. Apple right here, I think, is gearing up for a major quarter and perhaps finish to the year. I know some of you who are in my trading room know that I've been talking about this one for 2 weeks, ever since that day right there. Price was about $130 for a few days, and we talked about it at $130, $130. And so here's the deal with this one. We have a major compression. This is the beginning of the year, and we went super flat. Super flat, and not only flat, but lower highs and higher lows. We were in compression mode for the first quarter of the year and for the second quarter of the year. Now we're in Q3, first day, and look at this range. That's the previous quarter's range, and it's inside the quarter before that's range. So we have an inside quarter. It's like an inside day, only it took 3 months to build it out. Now we know inside days can be pretty significant in the right circumstance. When you have an inside day, it's building energy, and boom, big breakout can occur. We have an inside quarter, and a big breakout could occur. We're hugging the top end of the range. The only thing left is for expansion to occur. To the upside, we're looking at about 180 plus. 186.7. That's your 100% target from the edge of the range. So we're using this large key range here. That's the midpoint. It tried above, tried above, tried. If it can break through, 50% expansion, 100. 186.7 could be seen down the road. And I'm talking 6 months out. This is a year-end type of target if it can really get going and do its thing. I would say 165 is a high odds breakout target, and then we hope to see a continuation toward that 100%, which is very oftentimes the case. The other thing I'll say is right here, ever since it exploded last July and August, here's July and here's August, and look at that move. It gave us a pullback and has been sideways September, October, November, December. That's 4. And then you got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months. It was really 9 months, and it started to move last month. So that's a lot of months of sideways. That's a lot of pent-up energy. It could be very soon where that energy starts to get released. And if it is, we might have some big-time upside ahead in Apple. It has already begun the move. So that's the long-term story. Let's look at the short-term. Here's the short term. Strong move up. That's the day we started paying attention to it. Failed new low. Another failed new low outside bar. Very bullish move. 8-period average rising. Right here, higher value relationship. Any pullback could be an opportunity. Anything below, say, 34. So 134 to 130, 2 could be an opportunity to look for a rejection and a continuation up in the near term. Looking for this thing to extend to the upside up ahead. So this one could be due some major movement. Can it push through 138s? 138s has been the trouble maker for this level, or as a level for this stock, and we'll see if we can push through 138s up ahead. One last thing I'll leave you with on Apple is if we go back to seasonality. Here's seasonality right here. Here's show price as. Seasonally speaking, here is July, here is the beginning of August, and here is the end of August. This is Labor Day. This is about Labor Day weekend. We're about to go into the most bullish stretch, seasonally speaking, for Apple. You can see right here we hit another day or so and Apple goes into the most bullish stretch of its time. It rallies in July. You tend to have some sort of earnings event at the end of July, beginning of August, coupled with some sort of news event to pump late year sales. This is all a very bullish 2 months that takes us into Labor Day weekend. Can't say enough about this period of time for Apple. Again, you have to time kind of where or when you enter, and that's what we talked about earlier. If it just dips below 134s, that might be enough to get this thing going. But look at how it finishes the year. It tends to finish the year on highs. Again, this is a 5-year look back. So what if we look at a 10-year look back? I'm going to keep my lines up there. Let's look at a 10-year. There's the 10-year look back. Still right on the money. Still closing on highs. Still rallying. I don't even know if 20 years is relevant in Apple, because if you go 20 years back in Apple, they didn't even have an iPhone yet. But let's do it anyway. And if you do it anyway, it's still very strong in the same period of time. So we're coming into a very strong period of time for Apple here. And again, if we get some sort of early month pullback this July, it could be the last great time to buy it ahead of a major continuation ahead. We will see how it plays out. I will say, as one caveat, if it cannot find a way to get through that 138, which is the key range high and has stifled it time and time again, we could easily make a pullback fairly deep again, back to the 200 or somewhere in here before we try again. So 138 is going to be an early litmus test here for Apple. All right, let's talk RIOT. This is RIOT blockchain. Here's another one based off of market structure that I think could be very good. Again, if you're in the trading room here, you've heard this come up on our watch list here very recently. Here's your key range low, that one right there. Midpoint is right there. Top of the key range is 79.51. Recently we went down 25% expansion right here and bounced. We have higher lows coming into play. And then price was able to push back above the key range low of 34.26. That low right there, it held, it dropped back to it. In pushing through it right now, again, it opens the door to go all the way back up to the midpoint. It's just what happens in most cases. You can have a mid target here at 45.57. So any pullback early this month, again, like some of these others, this is a higher value relationship. Here's your midpoint for the month. If you pull back into that zone, that could provide a very good opportunity to reject something like this or something like this and push it not only back toward 40, but likely higher into 50 to 55, or perhaps right on that 56.88. So those are pretty good percentage moves that we're talking about here. This right here is 32.90. Right, just call it 33. 66 is here. That's a double. Can it get all the way back up to the top end of that range? That's a big time double. This is one of those ones that could be due for continuation. I would say if it can hold 32.50, it has a shot to continue higher. If it fails to hold 32.50, then this one probably needs more time. So that's going to be one to watch here as a market structure move. Now, if you want to look at how market structure looks when it plays out nicely, here's Pinterest. This is one that we had at the end of May as a buy candidate. Look at this right here. There's support right here, right here, right here. It came into it and dropped. And when it drops into it, or below it here, you see that little box that forms. And as soon as it's able to pop back above and reclaim those support levels and then come back and provide support, it pops back to the mid of that range and ultimately starts to work its way across toward the upper end of the range. Best part of the chart right here to look for longs. So that's what it looks like when it's played out quite a bit. Right now, RIOT's still in the early phases of that move. And I will admit, though, Pinterest did have a better structure. But RIOT still has a good shot. I wanted to talk AMC. AMC, again, one of those story stocks here. Right now, this one obviously exploded to the upside. I remember a neighbor texted me and said, "Wow, what about that AMC, huh?" And it was about right here. It was $10, and it was just sitting there flat for a while. I said, "It looks like it's about to double again to 20," and maybe 2 weeks later, here starts to move, and there's 20, and it explodes to 70. That's the power of a short squeeze when the shorts are forced to really cover here, and that's the type of move you get. So, story number one involves the moral of be careful shorting these stocks because they tend to explode like this. But what I will say is, if price were to drop a little bit more and come somewhere in this zone right there, into this LVN, that might provide a great opportunity to buy it on a speculative basis for a return back up against this D-shaped profile and towards 70. If you can get a 35 print, that's a double. So that could be speculatively speaking, that could be a great opportunity there to defend that key range low and work this thing higher. So that's the idea here. We also, again, because of the nature of these stocks and how they can squeeze, they can continue to squeeze in crazy ways until proven otherwise. If you use this day right here, this massive day squeeze, it went nearly to 75. Just call it 70. Here's 35. That's a 35-point range. It's a little bit more than that. That's a $105 target now. So just based on this major day, we have a $105 target. So we have a really good definable target. There's 105 right there. We have a great definable target that if we see 35, you may be able to buy 35 for 70. That's a double, and then you may be able to effectively triple that one to 105 if it catches one of those waves. So again, good to go with the flow of what's happening instead of shorting something like this because you don't want your face ripped off on the way up. I do not know if we even get that low at the moment, but if we do, great trap and go opportunity for AMC. Here's Stitch Fix. Stitch Fix, a good one here. This one it came up on our Max MGR. It was sorry, I always say Max MGR buy scan list this morning. And right out the gate, it looked like a good candidate. Finished strong here, almost 4.5%. Nice compression here over the last 3 weeks of trading. That compression has led to a narrow pivot range here on a monthly basis. It's higher than what we had seen before. Previously, it had been in a lower value relationship. So everything points to perhaps a breakout to come. If we do break out to the upside, you have a target at 70 that could be easily in play, as high as 73 based on the average monthly range. But here's based off of market structure here. I like this even more here. If you're looking at something like these lows right there, and you look at the top end of that range, well, I guess a little bit higher than that, about right there. This is the next market structure above, and we're kind of right at the bottom of it. So if we can break to the upside and we can get through, say, 65 half, 66, it opens up the potential to go to 80, and then maybe we trade in here a bit. But this one's coiling up. Wouldn't surprise me if we see a breakout ahead. The one thing about these candidates that can be tricky is that we're right inside a compression range. It could easily continue sideways for another 2 or 3 weeks and not do a thing. So it really needs to start picking up the pace. Today was a good day one. We'll see if it can follow through. Another one here to look at is Roblox. Let's look at Roblox. For those of you that know what Roblox is, you probably have children. If you don't, maybe your children are much older. This is a kind of virtual type of online gaming where there's role-playing and all kinds of little games and all kinds of things you can do. My kids spend a lot of their money in Roblox. They convert US dollars to Robux, which they then spend in the game for all kinds of things. New cars or new houses. They build houses. It's pretty cool. So when we IPO'd and the IPO was coming, I mentioned that this was going to be one of those ones that you'll want to keep an eye on for the long term. It's going to be a really good one. We got a great key range here. And initially I mentioned what I usually mention, which is this right here is the best spot to do business. If it can drop into that range between 55 and 60, you have a good shot to double this thing down the road. That key range here gave us this target right there. That was 95.06. It hit it perfectly and then went 150% extension to the 103s. So just a tremendous move. We didn't get our perfect entry, but it was close. Right there, very close. Held the lower 25, very solid. What you see right now is a double distribution profile developing here and here. It's a B shape. You can also see the LVN comes into play right there. I guess I can draw that better with this line right there. And that's the line to watch. It's basically 80 bucks. That's the zone. If there's a lower low failure here, if we retest this zone, it's an opportunity again to go 75 back up to 95. If we fail to hold that level, it's an invitation to drop all the way back across this market structure. And again, anything below this value and into this new territory down here would be a great buy for a bounce back up and a continuation. This is going to be one of those ones that will continue to do well, or should continue to do well early on and probably over the next several years. It's got a good niche. Really did well during the pandemic, increasing multiple X because kids went online. So good stuff here. I say keep an eye on 77.5 to 80. We had a bearish couple of days here. If it drops into that zone, a rejection brings you back 20 handles higher. We're close to it, a failure there, and man, we could be looking at a great opportunity down the way at this lower edge. So I wanted to discuss Roblox a little bit for those of you not familiar. Another one here to keep an eye on is HOLX. Again, the topic here has been kind of a market structure discussion. And you see some market structure in here. It breaks down, and then you get a rounded bottom, and then it reclaims that market structure on that day. The last 2 days it has spent pulling back and then bouncing, and it looks like it is sealing off those 66s. It's sealing off those 66s, which means if it can stay above 66 now, it has a great shot to continue much, much higher. It has a great shot to not only continue higher, but go up toward the top end of the recent range, which is 76. So holding 66 opens up 76 this quarter. We got to see if it can maintain acceptance above 66s, but this is an extreme reversal signal here. It's also an MGR buy signal, and it's a great spot on the market structure chart there for a bounce up. So it could be a good move to fill the gap, followed by continuation toward the top end of the range. This one needs to continue to hold 66s. Here's IYT. While that pulls up here, let me see. This is the chart of HOLX, and looks like bouncing between R3, R1. Here is R2. The next market structure above would fall right in line with that as well. Not bad. Okay. Today, a big day in IYT. Huge day here. Major move up. 1.3% to start a new month, to start a new quarter. This is something I've observed for a long time. Many times when you start a new month or a new quarter with your hair on fire like this, with a major trend day, price discovery day, it tends to set the tone for the month. The previous month was very bad for this one. Started the month with selling pressure and dropped tremendously throughout the month, closed low. Now it's starting the month with strength, pushing through new highs and a prior pivot high of 262s. If it can hold 262 tomorrow, we have a shot to go higher. So tomorrow, the trade, from a day trading perspective, so a one-day trade perspective, any pullback toward 262 could be a buy for a late day rally. Check mark trend day. That could trigger into a continuation over the next week or multiple weeks. The reason I like this one also is because of the weekly time frame. So if we open up the weekly chart here, and again, if you're in the trading room, we've covered this opportunity before. Last week we had it as a buy on Friday afternoon because we had a significant sell-off on that week right there, right? Major down week. Look at that, how big it is. And then we followed it up with an up week. That is an extreme reversal buy signal. On the pullback phase within an uptrending market, that's the ideal zone to have an extreme reversal, and that could lead to a bounce not only back to the highs, but likely through those highs. Here's the same deal. Here's the same deal. Here's the same deal. Here's the same deal. Each one of those led to more strength. It's the rubber band trade. It's the extreme reversal trade, and the YM has been IYT has been fantastic at using this pattern to jump higher. So if you look at last time, look how many weeks it went higher. This one over here about 5, 6 weeks higher. This one over here about 10 or 12 weeks higher. We may be at the beginning stage of a move back to 280 to 285. That's at least a plus 20 from here. And if we're lucky, through that level to say 290 or more. Last week I mentioned that here's the midpoint. Any pullback into that midpoint is probably your entry. 260 and you're in. It dipped a little bit below it and hit the previous quarter's close right on the button, and now closing higher today. Still one more day to complete the weekly bar, but if it can close above this high, that would be tremendous. Next week, any pullback again as deep as 260 could be an opportunity to get going to the upside and push this thing up. So IYT could be a tremendous buying opportunity here, already showing strength. Each and every time it has developed that extreme reversal over the last year plus, it has turned out really well. So IYT, keep it up on the buy watch list. Thank you for hanging tight. We got about another 6 candidates here that I wanted to talk about, and then we'll wrap it up here. The first one here, AGRO. This is a weekly candidate as well, a weekly signal right now. The way it's playing out, we still need to finish out the week. Obviously, we have Friday coming up tomorrow, so it's not done. It's in the oven, it's almost done, and it's almost time to take it out. And you can see a couple of things that I like about this one right here. Let's draw that line again. Great trending structure, great market structure, great pullback, great rejection day or rejection week. Again, we're in the weekly time frame. Look at that. Great move up. Awesome accumulation down here. Markup phase. This is a great spot right here for rejection. Right at the prior highs. It's right in line with how much this one tends to pull back recently. This is a great opportunity here for a short-term bounce and could be a continuation higher candidate. That's going to be one to watch. I will say from a very short-term perspective, like on a day trading perspective, this is the daily chart. You have that rejection day, and look at these 3 days of absorption off to the right. Tomorrow could be a one-day stop run day one way or another. If it pushes through these highs, we may have one big day up, you know, something like this where you have these narrow days and it goes bang, or you have these narrow days and it goes bang on that day, or you have these narrow days and you go bang, like my sound effects. That's what we could see here pretty soon. We may be looking at a breakout that opens up a big high range day, likely to the upside. But the same can happen to the downside. If we fail through these lows, then I assume we'd get a big down day. So from a very short-term perspective, this one might open up a pretty good move higher. Very little bit cheaper of a stock compared to what we've seen, but just wanted to talk about the opportunity. This one's Grow Nation. Grow Generation. Grow Generation, I believe, is a cannabis-based stock, or in the cannabis industry group. This one caught my eye. Number one, I mentioned this to the group as well. I did read a piece here where Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, I believe it was. My brain's blanking right now. I guess a long day. But one of the justices there wrote a decision, or not a decision, an opinion about how the marijuana laws are antiquated, they're contradictory, and we may need a revision of those. Which is to say, full legalization at the federal level. That could provide a tremendous opportunity for a lot of these stocks. This one has had tremendous growth over the last year in this space, while others have not done quite well yet. And since then has really been able to maintain those gains and develop new market structure up ahead or up above. Rounded bottom, failed new low. It looks like it's starting to wake up a little bit. Man, if it can break to the upside here, it wouldn't surprise me if we make the next major move up. I mean, even from this current price of 50, it may double to 100 down the way. And be a great measured move in doing it. So if you see this high, you see that low, midpoint is here, 100% expansion puts you right there. That essentially is 100. It's about 102. Rounded bottom, 50 bucks, 50 to 100. It may take 6 months. It may take by the end of the year or with a stroke of luck into the beginning of the new year. But this one has a good shot here. I wanted to talk about this one a little bit as a short-term candidate, but also as a long-term potential candidate. The failed new low today suggests that it's trying to move higher. Can it get through 51s? Failed new low, Higher value relationship, the first pullback into the pivot range should yield new highs. We'll see if this thing can get going. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that one. This one is solar, SPWR, SunPower, market structure. Candidate here, you see 2750. The top of that market structure is 3750, and from there you got about 50 down below it here, somewhere in the 20 zone. That's your market structure right there. Great move off the key range low, a push higher, and this is the major level, 27.5. You see it here, you see it there, in that zone here. It gave it up, came back to it, it went through it. You have higher value relationship going into the new month. It had been lower for months and months this year, so that's a big change of pace. In getting back above 2750, this is huge. You can see the big burst up. Can it hold on this pullback? If we can see a higher low develop here, 2750, between 2650, 2750, right in that zone, we have a shot to rally to 3750 up ahead, a plus 10 for this one, which would be nearly 50%. Not a bad move. Basically, you're trying to get back into this range right here. You're trying to get back into that range. In order to do so, you pop up, you pull back, now you defend that edge for a push higher. 27.5 to 37.5 could be ahead for SunPower. All right, the next one here, let's take a look at INO. There's a lot of these candidates here. Again, there's some stocks, obviously, that are way up at highs. Some of these futures contracts way up here at highs. Some things are much lower. We're finding candidates right here that have gotten a little beat up here lately, but are starting to recapture market structure. This is INO, pharmaceutical company. I always got to give a caveat for that one. You got to be careful with those. They tend to pop very quickly and they drop very quickly. Pop and drop, etc. This one might be setting up for a pop. If you were to see a pop, you take the money and run, and you move on. But this one right here is showing good market structure. We can draw a line basically here. You can draw the top end of the range, I guess a little better than that, 19s. And you have the middle of the range somewhere around here, call it 1350, somewhere in that zone. That's your range. You got way down to 6 right here. It looks very similar to SunPower, right? It popped real big, it pulled back, and it's holding that edge at about 850. This month, higher value relationship holding in this area. If it can hold this zone, it's coiling up. It has a shot to pop to 13. You know, very similar to this or that, right? It gets down here into this zone, it tends to pop toward 13. When it fails here, it has to do the whole thing, and now it's trying again. 13 could be a really strong target for this one down the road if all things work out well. Maybe we need one strong pullback first. You know, something like this that takes you down to 8. 8 could be a great entry for a move to 13, and maybe back to 16 if you're super lucky, back to the top end of that range. That'll be a double from that area. So one to keep an eye on. I would categorize this one as a speculative idea, one where you don't want to bet the farm on this one. You want to know that this one right here, being the pharmaceutical, is almost like a crypto. I mean, it can get crushed in any moment. It's not like one of these more established stocks that is less likely to do that. So be careful with INO. A couple more candidates here. Starbucks. Starbucks has developed a very, very narrow compression. It's been about a 2-month narrow compression, a downward sloping range for the most part. We now have a little bit of a rounded bottom here, and we have a strong start to the month. Remember, you have a strong start to the month or a strong start to the quarter. or both, it can tend to be indicative of what's to come. If we're breaking out of this range, it could be huge. What you see here also is a lower value relationship for the month. Super narrow pivot range for the month, but now taking it bid. Narrow range, compression leads to expansion. We may see Starbucks pick it up this summer and make a move for new highs into 120 and likely beyond. So Starbucks right now perking up a little bit. If it can start to get above 114, 115, it really opens up the upside up ahead. In terms of range, quarterly target puts you at about 130 on the highest end of this thing. So basically you're looking at this quarter's range, which is the narrow compression. If you start to break out, you have a shot to see the 100% target down the road around 130. I think more than likely if you can get to 120, 125, that's a really strong move this quarter, and a 130 target might not be till Q2 if it were to get there. Last candidate to look at here is TDOC. Here it is right here. Okay, so TDOC is a good one right now to keep an eye on from a pivot range perspective. So here's the pivot range last month. Here's the pivot range this month. And you can see how price went bid right off that zone and shot higher to close the month. Now we're pulling back into the pivot range. You can see this CLVN right here. The midpoint of last month's range coincides with the 160 CLVN. We could pull back into 160. If we can hold 160, we got a nice continuation coming ahead. So 160 is the bounce off point for this. If we're looking at this from, again, a market structure perspective, which has kind of been what we've been doing here today, you're looking at just this narrow range right here, which is 170 to 200. Man, if it can hold 160 here, it has a shot to go up toward 200 up ahead. From there, it may then, build in this area before it can maybe climb even higher. But right now, this is going to be the first big test here. 160. Can 160 open the door to 200 and get back into the previous market structure there? Perhaps that can be the case based off of the current trend, the CLVN, and that midpoint. So 160 going to be a big test here fairly soon. Wow, 2 a.m. over there in India. Thank you so much for joining me at this hour. I know it's not easy for you all on that side, but I do see a lot of love out of India. It's incredible each and every time to see that. So thank you very much for that. And I'll check out the YouTube comments as well. Thanks for that bit right there. Will do. So right now, again, we've covered a ton of different candidates here. We have short-term candidates, longer-term candidates. We talked a little bit of futures and Bitcoin, Ethereum. The next month, again, with July, in terms of seasonality, tends to be very, very strong for the market heading into the 4th of July weekend. Apple, keep in mind, remember, Apple has a very strong seasonality for July and especially August. We're coming into that most bullish point right now. A lot of these stocks here could be headed much, much higher up ahead. We'll keep an eye on some of these market structure levels we discussed today. Again, I want to say thank you all very much for joining me for the monthly market outlook for the month of July. Thank you for joining me. I will post this recording tonight, so you'll have it right away later on this evening or tomorrow morning at your leisure. And as always, you can join us in the PivotBoss trading room each and every day. You can go to pivotboss.ecofin.com and join and get 50% off your first month. All right, everyone, have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all in the trading room. Take care, and I'll see you soon.